Oh, hey, Slingers. Welcome back to another Wordslinger Podcast. I am thrilled to have you here. Got a lot of interesting things to talk about, so stick around. I'll see you on the other side.
It's the Wordslinger Podcast, where story matters. Build your brand, write your book, redefine who you are. It's all about the story here. What's yours? Now, here's the guy who invented pants optional, Kevin Tumlinson, the Wordslinger.
Wordslinger.
Well, welcome to the Wordslinger Podcast. I am Kevin Tumlinson, the Wordslinger, author, voice of indie publishing, voice of publishing, face of author anchor. I got a lot of titles these days. But right now, I am just me talking to you, and that's my favorite part of the week. So thanks for tuning in. I am been doing a lot of thinking lately. This is another one of those episodes where I'm just going to kind of go off the cuff here and talk about some of the things I've been thinking about and encountering lately. It's interesting. I will occasionally get on this sort of, I don't know, we'll call it a bender. I go down some rabbit holes about things like sort of the abstract existential questions of life and reality. So I did a whole thing recently where I was listening to like a podcast or something. It kind of inspired me, and I have some theories about consciousness and reality, and sort of the impact of those two things working together. What is the nature of reality? That's a topic I can talk about for a long time with just about anybody if you're interested in that kind of thing. Sometimes people just sort of gloss over. You may be glazing over right now, for all I know. But I've had a few theories for years now. I wrote some books back in 2016 or so. It was a trilogy. It was called Sawyer Jackson is the name of that series. 3 books. I've had some short stories and things here and there. I keep thinking about maybe going back and writing sort of a sequel to that, or continuing it in some way. It was only ever meant to be 3 books, though. So it's a complete story, beginning, middle, and end. But it was an exploration of some of the theories I had. Now, well before the Marvel Cinematic Universe kind of ruined the whole idea of the multiverse for everybody by making it the Deus Ex Machina that solves all problems. I was fascinated by the idea of multiple realities. In fact, as a kid, I had subscriptions to exactly 2 comic books. Actually, technically more like 4 comic books, because Spider-Man was one of those, and any Spider-Man titles, there was like 4 of those really at the time. Let's see, there was Amazing, there was Web of, Spectacular, Peter Parker, Spectacular Spider-Man, Marvel Team Up, and just eventually just Spider-Man, which started with Todd McFarlane. So there was 5 titles there. And I had subscriptions to those back in the days where a comic book was like 75 cents. But the other series that I had a subscription to was arguably more of a favorite for me. And that was a series called What If? And Marvel now has a television series, an animated series based on this same concept. But the idea was there are all these different realities in the Marvel comic book universe, and each reality is kind of a tangent where like one event happened, one decision was made, and it veered everything off into a completely different direction. Like, what if Spider-Man had kept the alien symbiote that eventually became Venom? What if he continued wearing that? What if Captain America was never thawed out of the ice? Now, if you're not a comic book fan, it doesn't matter. They were interesting explorations because you got to see a side of the heroes that you rarely get to see, because suddenly they could exist in a world where they actually might be in danger, which you don't often see. You might actually have negative outcomes, which you don't usually see, because when you have ongoing series the character's always going to come out. They're always going to succeed and live through the experience. Because you don't want Spider-Man dying, because then the series is over, right? You don't want Superman to be shot with a kryptonite bullet and die and perish. Now, later they did play with these concepts. Both Spider-Man and Superman were killed in their comics, only to be resurrected. And now it's almost cliche to kill the hero, or to go dark. It's cliche now. Everything has to go dark. There has to be some dark, sinister angle to everything. Whatever. I got a lot of opinions on that. But so I just enjoyed the idea of seeing that what if angle, that alternate reality angle. I was always fascinated by it. So years later, when I started writing and publishing, I started off in like science fiction and wanted to do a bit of fantasy, and so I had an idea for a series in which a young boy, growing up, he's getting of age, right, like 16 or so, but he starts off as a little boy, but he discovers that he has a sort of secret past that he didn't know about, that there's more to the world than he realized, and he has the ability to, among other things, move from one reality to another at will. And there's consequences to this. There's dangers. There's things that he's learning as he goes. He's accompanied by his grandmother and his grandfather, and then eventually some other companions. So it was a great way for me to kind of explore a little bit of the alternate reality idea. But and that was the premise of the whole thing. But one of the things that I wrote into that was something I'd been noodling about for most of my life. And it was this idea of reality being a consequence of this underlying construct that we normally can't see. And I called it the not work. And it was from Sawyer Jackson's perspective. He could literally see threads that formed reality, and everything that you encounter, this coffee mug, your hand, or your body rather, or your smartphone, or whatever you're encountering, it's actually made up of a not work pattern in the greater not work. So think of it like a sheet of fabric, and woven into that fabric are different patterns that form reality. And Sawyer's ability was to see that and also manipulate it. So he could untie those patterns and retie them in a different shape if he needed to. There were consequences to that, You can't simply, if you have a quilt, you can't unquilt part of it without it affecting the overall quilt, right? You can't untangle something without it having an impact down the way, The fabric is drawn because of, it's drawn upward because of this tangle. And when you untangle it, it flows back downward again. So every change has an impact. So I've always seen that as I feel like there's something to that. In 8th grade, I met my friend Dave for the first time. I was brand new to a new school. And he was, unfortunately, he had to deal with cancer. So I didn't get to hang out with him all the time. But when he was in school and not in the hospital getting treatments, we shared a similar view of the world. We both loved the fantasy of exploring the universe through story, basically. And I had come up with this idea at that time of what if our universe is like a bubble, and black holes are kind of like if you had two balloons and you attached them at the little valve where you blow them up, like one balloon might feed air into the other balloon until they both equalized. I just thought that was kind of a fascinating idea. Years later, in high school, I think, that theory actually became a hypothesis. There's a difference between a hypothesis and a theory. But the hypothesis emerged of that very idea of maybe not the exact thing that I thought about, but I think I saw this in like an issue of Omni magazine, and it was the idea that each universe is a bubble, and that occasionally these bubbles might collide in some way and exchange matter or energy. So that's a theory or a hypothesis rather. Maybe it's a theory by now. Oh, sorry, earthquake. Sorry about that. So maybe it's a theory by now. Maybe they found a way to test it. But regardless, something about that clicked with me. It was this idea that as a kid, I came up with an idea that was later seriously explored by science. Maybe not in the exact format that I thought of it, but when I shared that whole thing with Dave, he saw it immediately as, wow, that's pretty much what you were saying. He and I would bounce ideas like that back and forth, and we continued to do so. And a lot of that stuff has eventually become the foundation of a lot of my writing, a lot of my novels, especially the sci-fi and fantasy stuff. I didn't do a lot of fantasy. I did a lot of sci-fi. A lot of my sci-fi stuff tends to be an exploration of ideas that I've held and thought about for years. In my first books, the Citadel trilogy that I wrote, there's the idea of a coherent beam of light called the light rail that humanity uses to get out into the universe and explore the universe. And that's the propulsion. And so, that's what moves them up to and beyond the speed of light. That was not... I took that from several things that I encountered, like this idea of solar sails and things like that. But I put all that together and kind of created a sort of physics around it. Those early books, man, there's flaws to all that stuff, and I put a lot of thought into it, but that doesn't mean I was right about anything. But since then, I've encountered news articles and things that are exploring that same idea. So I think that that's interesting to me, that I might occasionally tap into things through a sort of apologetics approach to philosophy and science that have enough merit that they get explored by the pros, right? So saying all that, I was thinking about the nature of consciousness and reality recently after listening to a podcast. And I thought, I have this idea about, I'm calling it my render theory. Here we go. Let's get a little geeky. So recently, the Webb telescope was launched. Recently, like within the past couple of years, 2 or 3 years, they launched the Webb telescope. And they used it to peer deeper into the universe. And we have held on for a long time. We've held this belief of the age of the universe. And we have said that, if we could look far enough out, we would start to see things are much, older, spread apart. There's less density. We would see the age of the universe in that way. And we were convinced that once we turned on the Webb telescope, we might actually see the very outer edge of the universe. And then we turned it on and we aimed it outward and we went out. We were able to look out, zoom out to exactly the level of age that we anticipated, the point at which we thought we would see the outer edge of the universe at about 13.8 billion years was our estimated age of the universe. And we were shocked and surprised because here where we thought we'd start to see things thin out and this eternal darkness emerge, we just saw more galaxies, more stars, more planets, more of everything. Nebula, density. We saw more density. And that is fascinating because immediately it tells us that our estimate of the age of the universe is wrong. So it's much older than we thought. And things aren't behaving the way we thought they would. So, in thinking about that, I had a conversation with someone, I think it was Ernest Dempsey actually, one time. We were talking about video games, which I don't get to play very often anymore. And when I do, I get anxious and feel like I'm wasting time, which is a little sad. But we were talking about a game, and I think it was like No Man's Sky or something like that. And the interesting thing about games like this is, and maybe I'm wrong about this particular game because I don't remember if this was the one or not, but it's this ever-expanding universe. You can never reach the end of it because, it sort of creates itself algorithmically as you go outward. And so you can discover new planets and things that no one's ever discovered. That's fascinating to me. I'm blown away by that idea. But then I started thinking about that, and I started thinking about, like I used to play World of Warcraft, and here's the deal. So in games like that, the universe exists, but, and it's established what it will be, what it will look like, except for this No Man's Sky or whatever, it's not necessarily established. It's just being made sort of as you go. But as you discover it, it's there, it exists. So it's rendered. And then you can come back to that place. In World of Warcraft, it's sort of the same. Like the world itself is established, but you don't see all of it. So they don't have to render the entire world. They only have to render this much of it as you go. The next sort of the headlights at night model. You can't see the entire road. You can only see like the 30 or 40 feet ahead of you that the headlights reveal, right? But you can drive from end to end in the country with nothing but that 30 or 40 feet of visibility because you trust that the rest of it will render. It will be there when you get there. So the idea I had was, what if we're looking out at the universe and maybe we were right about the edge of the universe. Maybe we were always correct about it until we looked for it. And there's some rules, some phenomena in quantum physics, and you'll hear things about like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle and the observer effect and things like that. And it kind of comes down to there's a weird issue in quantum physics. If we can see a particle, we can see either its speed or its direction or its spin, but we can't see all those things at the same time. If we measure one, it changes the other. That's a weird phenomenon. There's also some things like quantum entanglement, which Einstein referred to as spooky action at a distance. He didn't like it. He kind of came up with the whole idea, and then he hated it. Said, I must be wrong. I have to be wrong. And then it ended up being proven right. But it's this idea that two particles can become entangled, and no matter how far apart they are in the universe, whatever happens to one, it changes what happens to the other. So if this one is spinning and you stop it, this one will stop spinning. It's just bizarre. It breaks all the rules. It breaks the rules of, nothing can move faster than the speed of light. It breaks that rule. It's the implication that some form of information can be instantly transferred no matter how far apart these two objects are, and we don't know how it works. There's a point at which science stopped exploring a lot of this. Science and philosophy used to have a sort of partnership, but the problem is that in a lot of those early scientists that that you've heard of, like Einstein, they were all on board with the idea of philosophy being a part of science. It's how you discover new ideas, by letting your mind kind of play. Like, what if? You're asking that what if question. The trouble seems to be that because these questions can't be answered, we can't logic them, we can't math them. Because of that, it disturbs the more analytical scientists and researchers, and so they just decide we're just going to accept that that's a thing and not explore it. But we know what works. We know we can describe the universe through mathematics, so we're going to stick to that. And if it can't be described through mathematics, then it is just we'll just accept it as something weird that is a given that we will never understand. And so they stop exploring it. So the job of the philosopher has always been to explore the abstracts, to look at the universe and ask why. So, science is concerned with how, describing the how, the mechanics. Philosophy is concerned with why, what's the purpose. If you take a strictly analytical view of reality and the universe, they'll tell you that there is no purpose and there's no point in looking for a purpose. I don't believe that. Maybe it's my Christian upbringing, but it also offends my logic and reason because I think there is a purpose for everything. I think that we get to see it. It's interesting to see the universe tends to evolve from simplicity to complexity, even though we're in this entropic state, where we are in a state of what they would consider a sort of entropy is a sort of continual decay, right? Things spread out, things cool down. Eventually there'll be what they call a heat death of the universe. That's what they say. And yet, the further out in the universe we look, the more density we see. So what's going on with that, right? Like the entropy is not holding at the edges of what we know to be the universe. Yeah. So anyway, waxing and going off into some existential questions here. I have this idea that maybe reality renders as we look at it, right? Because we know that when we observe something, when we observe particles, it changes their behavior. So that observer effect, we are altering reality just by observing it. So what if everything at the edge of what we can see is just a potentiality, and by seeing it, by looking at it, observing it, maybe we are not creating it, but maybe we are causing it to take form. That's kind of the gist. It's part of it. And I think this idea of the threads, the knotwork, that weaves through everything, I think that folds into this. I've got several little ideas that are kind of coming together. And this is hard for a lot of people. This is gonna disturb some folks. If you're a materialist, this is definitely going to disturb you because, it means that there is a subjective reality. And that's the other part. That's the third part so far in my growing philosophy, my render theory. And it's a dualistic view. Here's what, and I'm sorry I keep clearing my throat. I'm sorry about that. Here's where this comes in. There's a dualism in everything, right? There's light and dark. There's up and down. And what happens though is there's a sort of it's more. What's the other? I'm trying to think of the other term I used, which fits much better. Syncretic maybe, but no, that's not it. Anyway, there's a concept though. I'm going to struggle a little with this. Two things can be true, even if those two things are opposed. So a lot of times when you have two opposed things happen at the same time, there's a cancellation. So like matter and antimatter, when those two things touch, they annihilate each other. However, the rules of our universe are that matter can never be matter and energy can never be created or destroyed. It can only be changed, right? So that mutual annihilation must produce something. Somebody already knows the answer to this, I'm sure. And and I haven't explored this one enough to go into depth about it. But I started thinking about this. There's always a fight between people who believe in an objective reality and a subjective reality. And I had the realization that both of those things can actually be true and hold at the same time, and they don't even cancel each other out. And here's my best example of it. There is a way within me, within my own mind, in which I perceive the reality around me. So if I saw something happen and I interpreted it to myself, that is my subjective reality. I saw this event, I saw these things play out, and within me, within the universe of Kevin, it is this. Simultaneously, there is an objective reality. Maybe the thing I saw didn't play out quite the way I thought it did. Maybe I've made a mistake. Or maybe the perception is accurate, but there's more to it, a deeper story. And so that's an objective reality. So think of it like this. You can look at me. This may work better. You can look at me, and you'll see who you believe me to be. And you won't be wrong. You can see I'm a writer. I'm a male. I live in Texas. These are objective facts. But you can't. You can change a lot of that stuff. There's objective reality can actually be altered, right? If you are if there's a mountain in front of you and you want the road to go through, you can alter that mountain to let that road go through. But what you can't ever change is the way someone thinks. So even though I may see the world in a way that's opposed to your view, that's my subjective reality for sure. But it's still true. It's still true for me, even if it's not true for you. And you can't change it, per se. You could try, but you're not going to change. You can't control my thoughts. You can't control the way I perceive things. None of that's under your control. You could lock me up. You could put me in a cell. You could maybe alter my brain chemistry or something, and maybe that would do it. But you can see where this is going. Like, even if you changed all that, if you changed the physical, there was still that thought. This is where it gets weird and hinky, but I have this idea that all information exists, has always existed, will always exist. If you look at this from a metaphysical view, there's something called the Akashic Record, which is interesting to study. But even in the quantum physics, there's an idea of a sort of pervasive field of information that has always been around, will always be around. I'm going to call that God. I'm going to call that the mind of God. God, in my view, my definition, is omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent. So that's the way I see it. If you look at the universe, though, and maybe you see it that differently, that's up to you. But if you look at the universe, it's really all about, we talk about it in terms of energy and matter and states, but it's really all information. And so, and if that information has always existed and always will exist, think about the implications of that. So, this is all babble to some of you, not writing related per se, except I do write about things like this quite a bit. And it was just interesting to me. It was just something I was thinking about and I wanted to discuss. And this is my podcast, so I get to discuss it. So, hey, it's Kevin Tumlinson here, and I want to talk to you about something that's made a real difference in my work over the years, and that is Pro Writing Aid. I've been using this for years. It's hands down the best assistive editing tool that I've found. And what I love most is that it works wherever I write. So whether I'm in Scrivener, or Microsoft Word, Substack, or anywhere else, Pro Writing Aid is right there with me. And unlike other tools, I get control over the kind of suggestions it gives me. So there's no rigid rules. It's just smart, actionable feedback that's tailored to my writing. And the best part is that the team behind Pro Writing Aid actually cares about independent writers and creators. They're focused on helping individual creators like you and me, not just big enterprise customers. And that is unfortunately becoming a kind of rare thing these days. And that's why I'm proud to support them. So if you're serious about leveling up your writing wherever or however you write, go to prowritingaid.com and use the code Kevin20 at checkout for 20% off of your subscription. That's prowritingaid.com, code Kevin20. And trust me, you'll be glad you did. Anyway, if these ideas intrigue you, I've started kind of writing some things about this. I'm going to kind of tinker with it. You know, I don't want it to distract from writing the novels, but, you know, it's just something I'm exploring, having fun with it. I think we should do that every now and then, especially for creatives and entrepreneurs. We should go on tangents every now and then. You never know where that's going to lead. I do want to say, and let's shift gears. If you were interested, by the way, in that conversation, like I am going to build some more things around this eventually, but you feel free to ping me with your thoughts. And, you know, this is kind of like those conversations you used to have in like high school or college. You know, sometimes they were assisted by illicit substances. Mine never were. I never needed any sort of drug or alcohol or anything to start going off on tangents like this. You know, the what if universe. Perfectly wired to do that without assistance. But if you want to talk about this stuff, you know, ping me in comments. Go to my website. Go to wordslingerpodcast.com. You can find me there. So, shifting gears, and then we're going to wrap up. But I just finished a week ago the sort of polished first draft of the book I'm doing with J.D. Barker. I've handed that over to him. He's handed it to an editor. He's reading it this week. I'm going to try to read it this week. He's at a conference. I don't know what will happen with that. He may hate every word of it, decide to slice and dice, or maybe it's not workable. I don't know. But I will say this: I am pretty proud of the work, and I'm excited about it, and so I am hopeful that it goes somewhere. But here's the thing, and this is the thing I kind of want people to take from this. I learned a lot in forcing myself to do a book in a new way, because I'm not an outliner. I've always been a pantser. But I had to do an outline for this book. I had to take a certain approach to this book that I haven't taken with other books. It took me much longer. And I was also writing it from a place of, I had kind of a breakdown, really. I guess not a breakdown. I just had like a kind of an existential crisis. I got burnt out. You know, I had a rough time. And it physically hurt at times to come back to writing. And that's not a place I ever wanted to be. But what I've seen since doing this is a change. I've experienced a change in my approach to writing and my perspective on writing. I'm trying to humble myself in this process, and it became about the work. It became about the creating the thing itself rather than the end game result. I do have high hopes for it. I'm hoping that I'm hoping it's a breakout. You know, I'm hoping it helps launch my career into a new level. It's changed my approach to my career. But it wasn't because I did it with JD. He hasn't even really given me any feedback on it yet. It was because I humbled myself to take a new approach. Right now, I'm working on another book that I had started really in the midst of all the angst, anxiety, dread, the existential crisis stuff. Some of the hardest days of my life. And as I'm reading this, I'm like, well, first of all, it's very good. It's written really well. I'm happy with what I've got. I already know that there's going to be some dramatic changes to the story, though. I'm going to take it in a very different direction than where it ended up, because I've never been comfortable with where it ended up. But I walked away from that book because of that before, and now I'm coming back to it, I'm kind of seeing, like, here's the bones. I can see what works and what doesn't work. I'm better at this, and I'm polishing this book the same way I did with the other book with JD. So it's changed my approach, right? And I can't wait. I'm excited about it, but I am taking my time with it. Whereas before, I always, I would write a draft in like 15 days, and it would be published 15 days later at most. Now I'm, this book with JD took. I started in September. It's now March. So what is that? That's like 7 months or something. I don't know. I'm not a math guy. Not very Rain Man-esque when it comes to that, but you can do the math. Several months have gone by since doing that, and really that was just the starting of the writing process. It took me a few months to do the outline originally, so I think we've probably been working on this for a good year. That may be frustrating to JD. I don't know. I did it different than what he asked me to do, so I don't know, but I know that I had to do it the way I did it in order for me to kind of overcome the things that were limiting me. So I'm happy with it. And but it's changed my approach to my writing. It's changed the goals of my writing. I've now learned and discovered that I think the key here is if you don't know what you should be doing with your life, examine what you love, examine what you've done. But forward progress in your life comes from deciding where you want to go. Not setting a goal. I don't think that's the key. I think the idea actually should be, what is the ultimate dream for me? What is the thing I just, if I had this, my head might explode. My heart would, explode from my chest. And then everything you do needs to start moving you toward that without the pressure of, I have to accomplish this. I have to make a living from it. I have to do this in this time frame. Don't put that pressure on it. Because what I'm discovering, and this is kind of coming out of a sort of exploration of that Wu Wei, which I do like as a discipline. But the idea is effort without strain, right? Opportunities come to you just as a consequence of making effort toward your dream, toward this end game. Call it a goal if that makes you feel comfortable. I'm not comfortable with the word goal for some reason. It just doesn't, it stresses me out. I think we get too goal oriented, and I just want my life to go in a direction, and I know what I want my life to look like, but I don't want that to be the end of it all. I want to, I'm trying to get into a momentum. I want to reach a point where I'm living a life that's exactly the way I picture it, and it carries me forward, and I always feel fulfilled because I haven't achieved this last thing that I think I need to achieve. I haven't reached the end, and then I have to now rediscover myself. I want to live by a process, not by an end goal. So does any of that make sense? I hope it does. If you got this far, it means you are you're probably a really interesting person. So make sure you reach out. I'm going to continue working on the new book. I'm excited about it. It's another standalone, which I know is going to frustrate a lot of my readers. I'm sorry I'm not doing more Kotler books right now or more Kane books right now, but I'm in a different era, and so I'm exploring things and trying to do something a little different with my career, shifting gears. So there's a lot of this kind of stuff. It's a crazy world, crazy times. Anyway, thank you for tuning in. If you would, make sure you like, share, subscribe, leave comments. All those things are helpful. Make sure you go to the wordslingerpodcast.com. It's wordslingerpodcast.com, not the wordslingerpodcast.com. Go to wordslingerpodcast.com. And there is that's a nice window into a whole bunch of other related things. You can also go to my website at kevintumlinson.com, but wordslingerpodcast.com will get you to all the important things that are Kevin related. Say hello, share stuff. I love doing this. I love doing this. Maybe if you liked this episode where I'm kind of waxing poetic about something philosophical and weird and out there, let me know, because maybe I'll do some more like this in the future. If you didn't like it, let me know that too. I may still do more of these in the future, but at least I know it's not something I should, aim for with every other episode. So I got some more interviews coming up soon. Some folks I think you're going to be interested in, especially if you're in the publishing world, but even if you're just an entrepreneur or just in the creative world in general, I got some real interesting folks lined up. And of course, if you want to support the show, we got our sponsor, Pro Writing Aid. I love those guys. Just had a conversation with Chris Banks a few days ago about some things I'm helping him out with. And of course, if you are looking for help in your business, in what you're building, and all you want to do is write, or you just want to have a hand in taking care of some other business and admin tasks, social media, marketing, things like that, check out authoranchor.com. Set up a discovery call. Actually, the link will be authoranchor.com/promo. And if you use that link, you can actually get $50 off your first month with Author Anchor. So instead of $2.99, it's $2.49 for that month. And you get 40 hours of work with a VA each month at that rate. And you can add on hours if you need them or whatever. But it's a fantastic resource. I'm proud of those guys. And from the people who brought you Book Brush, I'm proud of being a part of that. So make sure you check that out. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up. This has been a long, windy road for this episode. I'm glad to see you here. God bless you, and we'll chat next time.
Wordslinger.